All right, today's topic is meeting criticism with love. Got inspired by, I wanted to write something that was slightly political. It wasn't even like directly presenting points of views, but it was kind of, the topic was why politics turns positive people negative. And I just touched upon some ideas there. But as I talked about it, I realized that no matter how I phrase it, there's people who would get defensive about their points of views. And if I talk about seeing things that they say negatively, positively, they might have resistance to that. And then I had resistance to sharing something and someone having resistance to that. So I decided to shift my vibration on that. And so came up with this topic of meeting criticism with love. And it's going to be multi-parts because I can't do it all in one session, or I don't want to. And so this is going to be part one. And so I set a personal goal. If you want to play along and set your own personal goal, you can feel free to. Where did my camera go? Okay, there we go. We got camera. We fixed it, everyone. Apologies again. Learning on the fly here. Okay, so my personal goal is to be able to more freely share my opinions without taking the responses personally and grow from criticism instead of getting defensive. And so feel free to have your own goal. And in this, the topics that'll be covered are what is non-complimentary behavior, the benefits of practicing it, and then some mindsets to help you respond with love, and then examples of meeting criticism with love. And I'll do a brief preview of part two. So we're going to get started here with a 5-minute clip from a very awesome podcast called Invisibilia. This episode's called Flip the Script, and just going to play this clip. So it'll be about 5 minutes, but it's a really awesome story, and it's pretty short.
This story starts in Washington, D.C. on a warm summer night. There were 8 friends gathered around a backyard dinner table. They were toasting family and friendship, and everybody was having a good time.
Kind of one of those great evenings. Lots of awesome food and French wine, and it was like a magical night.
That's Michael Rabdo. He was there with his wife and his 14-year-old daughter, Kyber. And he says it was getting late, maybe around 10 p.m., when it happened.
I was standing beside my wife, and I just saw this arm with a long-barrel gun come between us. It was as if in slow motion, this hand, and then it just got really quiet.
The hand belonged to a man, medium height, in clean, high-end sweats. He raised the gun and held it first to the head of Michael's friend, Christina, and then to the head of Michael's wife.
Then he said,
"Give me your money."
That's Kyber, Michael's daughter.
Kept repeating, "Give me your money."
"Or I'm going to start effing shooting." And we believed him.
But there was a problem. No one had any money. So they started talking, grasping for some way to dissuade the man. They started with guilt.
What would your mother
think of you?
And he said something like, "I don't have an effing mother."
Michael remembers thinking, this is headed towards a very bad end.
Someone was going to get hurt.
But then one of the women at the table, this woman, Christina, pipes up. She has an offer for the man.
Said, "We're here celebrating. Why don't you have a glass of wine?"
It was like a switch. You could feel the difference.
All of a sudden, Michael says, the look on the man's face changed.
And he tasted the wine and just said, "Damn, that's a really good glass of wine." We had some cheese there too. And so he reached down for the cheese, and then he put the gun in his pocket.
The man drank his wine, ate his cheese, and then he said something that no one expected.
"I think I've come to the wrong place." And we were all like, "Hey, I understand."
For a moment, they all sat there together. The stars overhead twinkling, the sound of chirping insects in the night air.
And then he said something just so strange. He just said, "Can I get a hug?" My wife hugged him, and our friend hugged him. Then he said, "Can we have a group hug?"
And so everyone got up and formed a circle around the man.
I can't tell you how strange that was, but we all did come around him and hug him, and he said he was sorry, and he walked out with a glass of wine out the gate.
Later that evening, after everything had calmed down, they would find the glass neatly placed on the sidewalk by their alley. Not thrown, not carelessly discarded, placed. But that was later. At the time, all they could think to do was run into the house and cry in gratitude.
It was like, this was like a miracle. It was like a miracle.
But was it a miracle? Or is there a better word for what happened that night? Before we start, do you have any questions for me?
No questions.
This is a professor at Michigan State University named Chris Hopwood. Chris spends his life looking at how people interact with each other, and one of the things that he looks at is called non-complementary behavior. So the basic idea is that people naturally mirror each other. So when someone is hostile to you, you are typically hostile back. Warmth begets warmth. And breaking this pattern, say being really warm to somebody after they've been incredibly hostile to you, that is non-complementary behavior. And according to Hopwood, it's incredibly hard to do.
So if I am really nice to you and you're really cold and unfriendly to me, generally speaking, either I'll try to do something to appease you and make you like me so that you'll warm up, or maybe I'll respond with coldness to you because you're being unfriendly to me, or we'll just stop interacting.
But people do manage to sometimes behave in non-complementary ways, and when they do, it often completely shakes up a situation, flips the script. It happens between people, but also it can happen on a bigger level.
The reason, for example, that we admire people like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. is because they were able to maintain a sort of warmth and integrity in the face of people who were being cruel to them.
The March in Selma, nonviolence in India, offering a man with a gun at your head a glass of wine? Those aren't miracles. They're examples of non-complementary behavior.
Okay, so that was the clip. And as it pretty much summed up what non-complementary behavior is, the ability to respond in a way, I would determine is the ability to respond in a way that feels good to you, even if somebody else's response to you does not feel good. And let's talk about some of the benefits of practicing non-complementary behavior. So first one would be feeling appreciative instead of defensive. So if you can find a way to appreciate what somebody is saying to you if you can appreciate, so somebody taking the time to criticize you is actually a wonderful compliment, that they're saying something that you're doing is important enough for them to take time out of their busy day to offer their opinion on and put their energy towards. And if you can see it from that perspective and find a way to be appreciative of it, then you don't take it personally. You take it as, I must be doing something right. I'm receiving a strong opinion here. And then let's see here. Be who you want to be, regardless of who you're around. So if you can learn to practice non-complementary behavior, then it doesn't matter how someone's responding to you. You can choose how you want to be. And when you can do that, then you sort of have a freedom to just be yourself and not have to change who you are based on who you're around, because you don't have to match and mirror how somebody's behaving, because you've learned how to just be how you want to be there. All right. And then number 3, be the dominant vibration and influence others positively. So this is along similar lines to what we just talked about. And it's about, so if someone's hostile to you and you're hostile back, they're being the dominant vibration. If someone's positive to you and you're being positive back, even though it's a positive interaction, they're still being the positive vibration. But if somebody is negative to you and you can be positive, then you are essentially usurping the power dynamic, and you're no longer saying that their behavior towards you is going to dictate how you behave. You're saying that you're going to be the one choosing how you behave, and because of that, you get to set the tone. Like, even if they continue behaving negatively, the fact that you're choosing to be positive, and the fact that you're not being influenced by their negativity, means that the only possible change that can occur is that they can change to match your positivity, or they can reach a more neutral state, because you're not being influenced by that negativity. And then the fourth benefit would be that eventually you'll experience more love in return as you break the cycle of hostility. It's really cool. Non-complementary behavior is something that can allow you to essentially transcend fights before they happen. You can just be really disarming. You can be really, it's like because you aren't responding with the same emotion that someone is putting out towards you, you can share a space with them and still choose the emotion that feels most appropriate to you. All right. So here are some mindsets to help you respond with love. You loving something is more important than what loves you. So let's take an example of like a photographer. A photographer goes around taking pictures of what he or she loves. Then at the end of the day, that their portfolio, their collection of things that they've taken pictures of and given their attention to, will be a list of things they love. Now, it doesn't really... And so, like, you could have the reverse. Take a celebrity, for example, who's beloved by so many, but maybe doesn't have a lot of things that they really love. Maybe life was hard on them and wore them down. And so the photographer is going around. Maybe they're not making a great living, but they're focused on things they love, is going to have a much more loving experience than the celebrity who is on the receiving end of so much love and adoration, but isn't focused in a loving way themselves. And so if you can take that mindset and apply it to how you view things in general, then not only will you likely not try to like change yourself so that someone else will love you, but you will also then see the value in focusing on what you love about others. And the mindset number 2 here is understand that negative comments often come from a negative place, and accept someone for who they are instead of expecting them to change. So this is a pretty basic idea. If you can take a time to understand that someone being critical of you says more about them than it does about you, well, then it's really easy to sort of diffuse your indignance about it. And then you can just sort of like understand that and send love to that person. And then mindset number 3 here is agree with someone while focusing on what you want, causing their comment to amplify your desire. This one's probably a little trickier than the other two, but it is incredibly powerful in the sense that when you can, I like to use the analogy of like a martial artist. So in martial arts, if you throw a punch at someone, they don't sit there and absorb the punch with their hand most of the time. What they'll do is they'll like move to the side and like grab your wrist and like pull on you to like knock you off balance. So instead of resisting the force that you're throwing at them, they use that force in a way to move them towards their goal of I guess like disarming you and neutralizing the danger that you're providing them. And that same principle can be applied to criticism, where you can use the energy of that criticism as a way to feel less threatened by it, by channeling it in the direction of something that you desire. And so I have an example starting with that here. So here's an example criticism. Somebody says you suck at that. And maybe it's something you care about, and so they tell you that you suck at something that you care about. It might be easy to take that personally. And so I came up with a response here. You suck at that. You're right. I certainly have lots of room to improve. I can't wait to see how good I get at this a year or two down the road. And so, just with that little shift, you take it from having to answer and having to respond and like defend yourself and explain why it's okay that you suck at that. And you turn it on a focus on how much you're going to continue to improve. Because if somebody can notice that you suck at something, or somebody can notice that you have room to improve, then however good your experience has been thus far, it can get even better. And focusing on that better, if somebody wants you to become better at something, they want you to improve at your craft, then you can benefit from that. And you can make their desire for you to get better, instead of taking it personally, let it be something that fuels you in the direction that you want to go. And so the takeaway here is, by agreeing with them, you use the momentum they put into their criticism to help bolster you in the direction you want to go, instead of pushing against it and reaching a standstill. All right. And then example criticism number 2. All right. Somebody says, I hate you. Or maybe they hate a specific thing about you, whatever it is. And then, so here's an example response. I totally understand why you're feeling that way right now. And I just want to let you be where you are for as long as you want to be there. Which is not a typical response to somebody telling, I hate you. Usually you want to remind them that they only hate you because they're, temporarily in a negative state or something like that. And it that's kind of like underhanded. It doesn't really honor where that person is. And so, when you respond this way, the takeaway is that it takes the pressure off them defending why they're feeling that way. So instead of them explaining all the reasons why they hate you and why they're justified in hating you, you just can let them be there. And it allows them to stay there as long as they want. It's much easier to shift out of a negative place when you're not invested in being there. So again, if you start defending yourself, someone will defend their criticism and they'll become invested in being in that place. But if you flip that script and you can find a way to, to just let them be where they are, then they're no longer invested there in being there, and they'll only stay there for as long as their, momentum keeps them there. All right, here. Example number 3. Say, for example, someone says to you, people like you are the reason we have this big problem in the world. So whatever thing that they're seeing as a problem and then attributing to you. And this can happen a lot with something like, let's say somebody has like an agenda for something and you're just like, yeah, I don't really like that topic. I think is not really that important to me, or I don't think that by pushing against people who are doing negative things, I don't think that's really the solution. So like, instead of saying that, which is just going to get them to dig in and be that even more passionate about why you should be behaving the way they're behaving and whatever topic's important to them, you can respond with, someone who cares as deeply as you do does a ton to contribute towards the solution. You have really strong desires, and I admire that about you. So, in that example, you're looking at, instead of taking that energy that's directed at you and absorbing it, you are looking back at them and seeing things that you like about them, and recognizing that if somebody's taking the time to criticize you, that there's a powerful desire behind that. That desire is ultimately a force for good. So let's take the takeaway here. Instead of defending your position, compliment their passion. Nobody criticizes for no reason, and the powerful desire behind that criticism is ultimately a force for good. All right, so that's pretty much the sum of tonight's topic. So with the next episode, I will be doing an emotional process on this. Let's see if I can switch scene here. Okay, yeah. So, that topic does not apply to this. Okay, so I'll be doing the emotional process with non-complementary behavior and looking for ways to looking to find vibrational alignment with it. So if you look here, I got an emotional scale here to my left, and so what I'll be doing is anchoring my understanding with criticism, and like understanding like what I'm afraid of down here at the bottom, what I might need, what I'm afraid of losing, what I hate about it, and just going all the way up the emotional scale until I can get to a really high vibration relative to criticism. And once I can get to a really high vibration relative to criticism, or once you can get to a really high vibration relative to criticism, then you have access to different responses toward that criticism. And so that's going to be what we do on Wednesday's episode. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. It's a little shorter than normal, but I wanted to break it down into smaller chunks so that you don't have to sit down for like an hour plus to try and take in the totality of the topic.